Golden.
Zoom in.
Sure. Oh yeah, so they can read your code. Perfect.
I stopped sharing for now.
Did you mute? Not you.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to Tuesday Nemotron Labs live stream. Very special stream today. Obviously, we've got two people joining from HQ. What's up, guys? Introduce yourselves.
Hey, what's going on, Chris? The LLM magician wizard himself, a celebrity on X. And for those that have seen me on the stream before, I'm Mark Heaps from the developer community here at NVIDIA, and I'm joined by special guest, founder, CEO, friend, new dad, amazing success story, recent Silicon Valley transplant. Yep, Mr. Joaoa Moura.
I gotta say, checking out those boxes there.
I'm trying to make sure I know what's going on. I'm trying to make sure I know the guests, but we've had a friendship for a few years now.
Yeah, I gotta say, it has been like, it's one of the byproducts of the AI boom, I gotta say. And I gotta say, I love it.
Yeah, man, between talking about agents and what to expect with living in Silicon Valley and what to do as a new dad.
Yeah, I gotta say that you look back in the last couple of years, I mean, and you feel it because you're right in the mix of it as well. It has been insane.
Yeah, yeah.
And I gotta say that the AI and what's happening with AI has a way to permeate in your life and personal affairs and all that. And it has been a fun ride.
Tell me when you figure out the agentic babysitter.
Eventually, we're gonna get there.
You're gonna get there.
That's AGI right there.
And then, of course, Chris is joining us from his home base up in the Great White North. Hope you're staying warm, man.
It's a little bit snowy, but that's okay. What really warmed me up would be seeing a demo of CrewAI.
Yeah.
Let the people know what it can do.
Yeah. So as always, I'd like to remind everybody out there in the Streamiverse, say hi in the chat. We'll be able to take questions today for y'all inside of the chat. If you want to ask anything about agents, agentic workflow, the models that they recommend. This is obviously the Nemotron live stream, so we're going to talk a lot about Nemotron as well. But we know that the developers that watch are really excited about demos and hands-on stuff. So I think we should dive in first to the demo, and then I've got a lot of questions that I want to ask you. So you're going to be sharing your screen today and walking people through some things. But there's nobody better to talk about agents than the founder of CrewAI. So what have you got as a demo for us today?
So I'm excited. We can go as deep as you want in here. I have a use case that we actually use in CrewAI itself.
Okay.
So it's kind of like it's going to show us like drinking our own champagne a little bit.
There you go.
But I really enjoy this demo. We're using Nemotron on this one. It's a mix of like there's some GPT-4 Mini and some Nemotron in there. It's very cool. The idea is for every lead call, right? As a business, we have these opportunities, potential customers that show up. And then I have like the salespeople in the company that take those calls. And sometimes those are going to be opportunities. Sometimes they're going to be existing customers. And one of the main things everyone that we meet wants to know is show me a use case. Tell me about a use case.
Make it real.
Right? Everyone wants to see that. So what we ended up doing is we built an entire Agentic system that, given the transcript of those calls, it extracts the use case. Then it goes online and research everything about it. So it becomes kind of like an expert about what they're trying to do. And then plots an entire visual around like what they're doing in a way that's easy explainable. And that becomes a sales materials on itself. So that goes back into kind of like my salesperson. Like, so what happens in the real world is like they finish up a call and like 4 minutes later, boom, they have a visual, they email that customer or the potential lead.
That's cool.
And we have a new iteration of that I can show as well that actually creates the code, the demo, makes the video, snap my faces on it.
Wow.
So we're doing a lot of that. But I want to make sure that I show folks like how to get their hands dirty a little bit.
A little bit of foundation.
Yeah. So let me share my screen and you can go in there.
Yep.
Right
Let's
away.
share the screen and dive into it a little bit.
Yes.
And
there's
while you're setting that up, I see we've got people saying hi from the UK. People are saying hi from Greece. We've got folks joining from all over in the chat. Very cool. Thank you to everybody for joining us today. While Joao's getting our screen share set up. All right, so he's sharing a screen. If our producer Zach in the background here joining us today is going to share that screen. All right, we are sharing. I can see it.
All right, so there's a lot in here. Tell me, how much time do I have on this one?
The whole stream is roughly 30 minutes. So, you know, how far you want to go.
All right. So I'm going to take one step back because I don't want to guide people to get overwhelmed at once. Okay. So let me show you folks how you get to where I'm going to show you real quick. Okay. So I'm going to zoom into here real quick. I'm one of those people that have a workspace folder.
Okay. So organized.
if you want to create a new crew or flow, the way that you can think about those is if you truly want agency, like agent stock and figuring out things as they go, you're going for a crew. If you want a more kind of like if this then that,
right?
Like a more of like some sorts of like functions being executed events based, then you want a flow.
Okay.
What we're seeing out there mostly on the day-to-day is a combination of both.
Got it.
So you have kind of like a central kind of like backbone, and then you can add agency as much as you need to. Okay. So it might be a simple LLM call, or it might be a function call, or one single agent on an entire crew. Okay. So if I had to create a flow, I could just do CrewAI create flow, and I give it a name. So I'm going to do NVIDIA quick demo. So what it does, it kind of like creates the initial structure for you. So think about all the other frameworks that you have out there historically, like Rails or like React, right?
Yep.
It creates that initial infrastructure. So if I open that up just so that you folks familiarize yourselves with what we're going to see on the actual use case, keep in mind, this is a flow. And by the way, it seems I'm giving myself away. I am a cursor guy. So there you have it.
The secret is out. Yeah, you use this cursor.
I love it. So you have this basically main function. So it comes with an example. It's kind of silly, but it helps people to understand. So with flow, all you have is this one class and use the simple annotations to dictate what happens, right? So start indicates this is the first function that's being executed. And then when this function is done, you have this listening. So as soon as this one is done, it's going to kick off generating poem.
Okay.
So you're basically using these annotations to dictate the order of the executions. Again, it's a very thin layer if you really want to go into that. But in the end of the day, there's a lot of like more complex ones that you can use. And then you can at any point call an entire crew. So for example, this initial one is just grabbing a sentence. This one is actually kicking off the agent. This one is just writing a file.
Okay.
So you can see how you have the determinants where you want, and you can have the agents where you need it. Now let's go into the real deal, because between this and what I'm going to show you, there's kind of like a gap. So this is our use case that I have built. So again, so that you remember, the way that this works is supposed to run as soon as a salesperson wraps up their call.
Right. They finish the call. It starts ingesting immediately. The crews are scraping. Other agents are out there searching. They're compiling. So it's shared intelligence.
Exactly. The cool thing is once that you have a flow, you can plot it. So I can do CrewAI flow plot. Because I'm using some cutting edge features in the framework, there are some things that are going to show like a little odd, but we're going to be able to see at least partially what that looks like.
Okay.
So here's what that flow is supposed to look like. One, we start with a quick pre-screen. Now, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Yeah.
There you go.
A quick pre-screen. So like check, is this a sales call? Is it not? If it doesn't, just skip it. If it is, let's extract the use case.
Okay.
Identify the sales rep. So again, you can see how extracting a use case is just one single LM call, or identifying the sales rep, one single LM call, right? But then in case it reaches kind of like the use case quality, then you want a deep research. That's a crew, and that crew is all agents using Nemotron models.
Okay.
So if I go into my folder, again, we're going to see a very similar structure. We still have that main file with our flow. We're still going to find that start annotation to indicate this is where things start. And you can see there's some child function calling. I'm using GPT-4o mini. But then as you go into these different routing and listening functions, you get into the actual crew. And once that you get into the crew itself, if I can find this, there you go. So it calls this research crew, and it has its own folder, right? And then in this folder, you can get all your agent definitions. In this case, we're using Llama 3.3 Nemotron Super 49B, extremely fast model.
And this is where you have your sys prompts and your context prompts per agent and all of that. So these are the personas.
Exactly.
Okay.
So in here, we have a few personas. There's a company researcher, there's a use case researcher, and there's a use case compiler, right?
Right.
So these are the agents that after we have gotten to this plot where we already know a few things. We know the use case, we know who was the salesperson, we extract all the information. Now I wanted these agents to become a specialist on what this company is trying to do. So it goes out there and researches everything about it. So it then can go and create the actual infographic that we can use.
Okay.
We're using some human in the loop as well, and that is interesting. So I want to show you that. Whenever we want to have a human in the loop, we can use a specific annotation that goes by, let me search here, human feedback.
Okay.
So you can see that it's like, hey, please review this generated, yada, 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 just make sure that this works out right.
Right.
So you have a few human in the loops like that across the entire thing.
Okay.
So let's run this and see what that looks like.
Sure.
The one thing that I would say is let me make sure that I'm using, I really like this Nemotron 3.3. I was using another one before, but you folks cooked on this one. So,
yeah, the smaller model, right?
Yeah, so fast. All right. So here, let me come in here and I'm going to do CrewAI run. So here we're going to see the actual execution. I'm using as a part of like the use case, the transcript. I'm using one of our customers. It's DocuSign, so everyone kind of like knows them.
Yeah,
they're a good customer of ours. They're using us for a lot of sales automation use cases
and a massive volume of calls they've got to be processed.
Oh yeah, exactly. There are days now that they do like hundreds, like thousands, hundreds of thousands.
Wow.
It's insane. Yeah. So here's what you can see. Some of the logs, right? Our flow started. Pre-proof screen checking out. It's passed. It discussed an AI implementation in DocuSign. That's great. Now extracting the use case, like looking at all the transcript and all that. So this was not a sales call. This is actually from a conference talk that they gave about using CrewAI. So that is interesting. But they found the use case in the talk. Now extracting who is the actual kind of like sales rep in there, and then starting to do the extraction. Found the use case, and now the crew start. So all this now is Nemotron within doing the research, right? All right, let me research DocuSign, find more information. So research DocuSign company overview, talking about AI customer outreach, that was their use case. So you can see Nemotron now here as this agent, basically researching all these things on Google, scraping websites and getting all the information that it needs. So it's gonna spend some time now because that's the part where I want the agency. Right. That's the part where I want things to get a little messy because again, and that's the magic of the agency part is you can throw anything at this. Right. But whatever the use case might be. So
but the messiness is literally like all that it's pulling in.
Exactly. Okay. So you can see, for example, we have customers that go from like CPG companies like Johnson & Johnson or PepsiCo or AB InBev all the way to the U.S. Department of Defense. Okay. And you can tell that like those use cases are going to be vastly different from each other, right? So the cool thing about something like that is extracting the use case you're going to need it no matter what. But on this research is where all of the magic happens for that actual output. Now, as this thing runs, I want to make sure that I show an actual output so that you can see what that looks like.
Yeah.
So let me go back. I have this deployed actually on our enterprise product, so you get to see a little bit. And whenever we do, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so everyone can see it better. So boom, boom.
Looks like we're showing up good on the screen there.
Oh, nice. All right. So I'm going to show you, for example, from hopefully this one was a demo that I did a while ago. If I open this up, it shows kind of like another customer of ours, CHH Healthcare, and talk a little bit about how they're doing. So here you can see some of those visuals that are being generated, right? And the idea is you can do the human in the loop in the terminal, as I'm going to show you in a second. But here we can also do straightly in the UI as well, where we can like give it some feedback, like.
And is the feedback going to the agents themselves?
Exactly.
Okay, so if it brought in sort of what you were saying earlier is the chaos, like all of the aggregate that it's pulled in, that's where you can go in and tune it rather than having to think about working at an individual agent layer and changing the sysprompt for the persona of the agent. You can now go on this sort of tunable top layer and say, hey, you indexed too much on this, you thought too much about that, and that sort of fuses into all of the agents.
Exactly. So the way that I'm thinking about it, and I'm talking about this publicly as well, it feels like these agentic systems, they have a few different layers to them,
Mhm.
but there's definitely three main layers that I'm seeing over
Okay.
and over again.
Okay.
One is this idea of having somewhat of a deterministic control, like a backbone, like the flow that I showed you here. Then two is have a spectrum of agency, something between one LLM call to an entire crew. And the third one is that human in the loop component that I want to say everyone likes like yes, if you could automate everything, that's like infinite gains and that's amazing.
Sure.
But in the end of the day, that human in the loop has such a big impact on the spectrum of use cases that you can attack.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Well, and I think the context there too, I mean, with your use case, but really applies across the board. The human in the loop could be, hey, go generate this scrape in this report after we have the call, but maybe there's something that's happening on the calendar or happening in the roadmap, and you need to just shift the context a little bit. And so as a salesperson, you no longer need to go out to an analyst team to do that. You can just sort of, I know this is a loaded word in this field, but you could tune it to a certain degree without actually fine tuning it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think like if you think about it, it's funny because everyone thinks about AI agents in the scope of like efficiency gains, right? But what we're doing here is not efficiency gains because this is not something that my sales teams were doing before.
Right.
This is like code and code because some people also love the term, but
Yeah.
this is more innovation geared, right? So I think it's interesting because you see that pattern when people are using. A lot of people start thinking, well, how I can gain efficiency, but then they start to thinking, all right, I got some efficiency now. How I can use to generate revenue,
right?
And eventually they start stumbling into these use cases where they're like, well, this is innovations that I wouldn't be able to do before,
right?
And now I can. So here you can see like it researched the entire thing. So we found context on the company, the agents, like the response of their use case. It found all the data on the actual use case, adoption trends.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot in there. Now, all that information went into generating the thing. You can see hallucination checks, which is pretty nice as well.
I saw that in your diagram, yep.
And then it basically generated the actual kind of like an infographic. So in here, if I copy this link, I can actually go in here and chat and see what it generated. I just want to make sure that I think the line is broken somewhere. Let me figure out where it is. There we go.
Okay.
So the receipt, DocuSign, intelligent agreement, management technology. So all this looks good. There's one thing though. This is not our logo.
Right.
So I can come here and say, great.
Right, because this so this is a Gen AI model generating the image for the infographic, but it didn't actually have your brand guidelines. There's no brand book available to that model unless you were to tune it and train it for that.
Exactly. It has some stuff on the prompt level, but I mean, it's that kind of changes that allows you to do like, oh, I want to remove the 3P challenges. I want to remove the solution. I want to change this name or changing the logo. So you get to do those adjustments, right? And that's the beauty of that. So again, I don't want to hijack the entire stream to talk about this, but I do find it's interesting for you to see a little bit and kind of like how you can actually see this use case as being extremely valuable. So I just stopped sharing my screen. Sorry if that created.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, Zach will bring us back on to camera here. So I think we had a couple of questions and comments.
Yeah, we got a great question. So, like, I mean, we're talking about human in the loop a lot, right? But something that's kind of become a more let's say used term is human on the loop, right? Especially when we talk about things like our AI assistants that people are beginning to use every day. And what's your perspective? We have this question from Harshara Srivatsa from Twitter. How do you have a perspective on human in the loop versus human on the loop?
Yeah, I gotta say, thank you for flagging the question there. I gotta say, I think it's interesting. I have seen both use cases. I think it depends a lot on the use case itself, right? I think there's a pattern where people are basically finding this idea of delegating many things to agents extremely rewarding, right? And I think we're feeling this with like engineers first, where you're basically like, oh, I'm kicking off 4 different agents doing 4 different features across different branches and different projects and all that. And I think now it's where a lot of the business people are also looking at this as an opportunity, like, all right, how I bring that into my late today? Can I kick off these things to like create multiple customers, kind of like materials or spreadsheets or reviews? So the level of how much human involvement you want to do, if you want to make that more conversational, for example, where it's just about coming in and asking for feedback, but it's more of a conversation. We have seen use cases like that as well. But I would say that like independently if it's in or on the loop, if it's all the way to super conversation or just asking for feedback, having humans involved definitely unlocks a whole new spectrum of use cases.
Yeah, I imagine, because you could also have, most of these sales reps in this example will have a follow-up motion with the customer.
Yeah.
But the thing is these agents right now aren't scraping like a Salesforce API to know the history of the engagement with that customer. So if you could also make the agent craft a template or ask the human what questions or what answers to their questions do we want to populate an email back to them, setting up your next calendar agenda, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So that human really becomes the central point of context.
Yeah, 1,000%. And again, we are seeing some use cases like that. I don't have enough time to demo something else, but I will show something later and we can circulate.
Yeah.
That is using kind of like a CRMs as well and generating videos and all that I told you before.
Yeah. I have a feeling we're gonna get y'all back on a couple of times. Chris, you had another question?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things I think that Mark pointed out, right, is this idea that we want agents that can kind of learn with us. And I think to me, that's where this human on the loop pattern really showcases its strengths, right? Versus just kind of interrupting or checking a box to say this is working well. It's this idea that you can teach over time or in a way tune that agent to learn with you. We do have another great question from the chat from at j.erickson, which is there a way to design these agents in a less deterministic way? I missed the autonomy of the agent. So I think, you were talking about this with the difference between flows and crews, but, can we kind of remove the flow and just let the agent do what it feel like?
Absolutely. In matter of fact, I found that a lot of our use cases end up like that. I do think that, like, again, sometimes when you get to work on kind of like a more regulated industries, they want to like scale that back in. But if anything, what I have seen is you go back a year ago where the models were not like, they're great, but they're not like as good as they are now, right? They keep getting better over time. We would see a lot of people putting a lot of scaffolding, right? So you would see all sorts of DAGs and graphs and people adding so much deterministic in there just to make sure these models behave nicely.
Right.
And as the models are getting better, what we are seeing is definitely people going on that route where they're removing some of that scaffolding and just letting things be. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely create something that is only crew based. And in matter of fact, I would say that is still mostly of the use cases that we create today. That said, we are seeing the adoption of flows, and that has been increasing. So it's interesting to see the changes between maybe simple use cases that require less, like 0.5% or 5% nines of like accuracy are okay. And I think as models come better and better, we might see more people can like changing lanes. But I think it's a component of like different flavors, right? And you got to choose how you mix them up.
I think it's a really important point. One of the other trends that we're seeing from not only architecting this way, but when you're having to make business decisions, I'm curious the trend that you've seen. I mean, when you and I first started collaborating a few years ago, we were talking about these, 70 and 90 and 120B models. Suddenly we're getting into models that have reasoning layers that are, well below 30B. Some of them are even getting down to 9B. Like we obviously have our nano model, which is spectacular at around that scale. So you have the ability now to build flows, build crews, swap out the models that you're using, and instantly reduce some of the cost for the clients, right? Because now for the inference rate, the cost per token, the smaller model, the speed and response that you're getting, that all changes. So now there's levers you can pull, right? Like introducing reasoning layers. I imagine you wouldn't want a reasoning model on every single one of those stages in the architecture, but you did have a reasoning component at one part of it. So talk a little bit about what you've seen that we can share with developers, other startups that are trying to build agents, that are trying to support their customers or their prototypes. Where do you see this going? Because obviously we've put a lot of work into Nemotron. We've been kind of crushing it on benchmarks, humble brag, right? Shout out to Chris and the team and all the amazing work that they're doing. But, we've gone from this LLM to SLM. What are you seeing there now?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I can even show some stats in here that I was loading as we're talking. But there's definitely a pattern where I think everyone that is building these agents, technical or not, they recognize that the market's moving extremely fast.
Really fast, yep.
So it can, like, you can wake up in a week, a new model comes out, right? Like you folks launching something, you're crunching the benchmark, like, all right, should we change it? Right? Should we experiment with that?
Right.
And I find like a lot of people struggle on like making those decisions, like on when to do it, and not only when to do it, but to find a way to measure whether impact is positive or not.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a few customers do this.
You want to share your screen again?
Yeah, this was a little bit in the script, but I want to show you some of the ways that we actually have been doing this ourselves. So let me share.
I saw a couple of mentions of my former team in here. Got a little Grok shout out going on as well.
Yeah, so
just while we're
some Grok models.
While we're bringing this up, one of the things that I want to make sure we touch on, because we were just talking about it, and I think it's, listen, you got to plug Nemotron. Okay, that's part of my ethos. But from at Tally Laxman, you know, how are we dealing with model efficiency for the resource hungry workloads? And one of the things that we've done, we being Team Green, is produce models like Nemotron 3 Nano, right? Which is a MOE model, but it's not just MOE, it's a sparse MOE model, right? And what that means is that we're able to handle these kind of very resource intensive applications like multi-agent crews without kind of blowing up the compute budget, right? And doing things like having really long conversations between agents and it not making the whole system slow down. So that, I mean, part of our mission with Nemotron is to create the most efficient intelligence as opposed to just the most intelligent systems. And that's something that I see be useful in Crew anytime that I've had the chance to use it. And I think that's something that, you know, is important to keep in mind in the back of your heads, is that whenever we're talking about these models, we're really, really trying to hammer in that efficiency point. So, sorry, go ahead with the screen share.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people are honestly leaping not only in Nemotrons because people are adopting, but on NIMs.
Right.
Like NIMs, honestly, it's pretty good. If you haven't tried the NIM platforms too, I would definitely recommend it. It's pretty easy to use and pretty good. And I think like super fast response times as well. So yeah, don't sleep on that for sure.
Yeah.
Just to highlight a few things that I think are relevant. One is ability to compare models. You don't need to use CrewAI for that, but I do recommend that whatever you're using, like the models or the platforms or the frameworks, you want to have a way to compare things, right? So not only evaluate them.
Yeah.
So here's one example. Again, unscripted, I pulled this off last second, but we have this idea that allows you to basically compare different models and see how they're performing. So 4.0 with 4.0 mini was a comparison that ran back in the day for this.
Sure.
And my feedback at the end of the day is like, well, 4.0 mini and 4.0 were roughly the same, even though 4.0 mini was taking more time. So why not spare kind of like the money and kind of like use something else, right?
Yeah.
So this ability to like have a new model coming in and compare them, not only across the public benchmarks, but for a specific use case, it's something that is relevant for a lot of these folks out there.
Yeah, I think that's so key, right? Is like the benchmarks give you a signal, but once you put into the application contextually for what your needs are, that's where the rubber really meets the road.
1,000%, 1,000%. So yeah, I would say like those are some of the things that are like probably people should be watching for, is the ability of like, as this model got better, how they make conscious decisions about how to change their architecture.
Yeah, yeah. And what are your thoughts? I know a couple of people had this question. What are your thoughts now that we're moving into more of these mixture of experts based, you know, models, you know, integrating these into your agents compared to the single shot LLM? I mean, is that the dynamics of a Crew? Is there, do you see leaning more into the reasoning capabilities of this? Like, what's that look like? Because you guys are dealing with some really big logos. And I think I remember talking to you at one event. I think you had a customer that literally had like thousands of agents that were built in. Like, you guys are almost having agents making agents for the needs of the agents. It's turning a little bit into an Inception meta meme at this point. So what are you seeing there?
Yeah, I gotta say, definitely becoming Inception in so many ways. It's interesting because when these first reasoning models came up, it kind of like broke agents a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because honestly, these models, like because of their reasoning steps, they have a tendency for not wanting to use tools. So like when you say like, well, like maybe you should research something, it debates on itself on its inner thought and creates conclusions. So it almost like we saw hallucinations skyrocket with these models.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So we had to adjust a few things to make sure that it worked nicely with these models. I think in the end of the day, like the reasoning does add a new kind of like a layer that you can kind of like leverage in terms of getting these agents to work better. I do find it extremely helpful when you're trying to create long form content. And I think that is where it would perform the best. That is that. I think that the smaller models, as we're talking about LLMs, is where you get a lot of bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Like honestly, these agents can run small models and it's pretty good. I mean, the Nemotron that we use here, like that is extremely fast. And that is the 49B model.
Yeah.
Right. So in the end of the day, like you wouldn't imagine using a 49B model like a year ago.
No, not at all. I mean, the improvements, the training standards, everything is changing. Once you believe you've got your system, I think one of the things that I've seen about agentic workflows is you can get the framework, the architecture with your agents, but you have to make it in a way that it's rapidly malleable. You can iterate on it, you can swap out models and still have those sysprompts, still have that context in there and not have a 0 to 1 reinvention of your framework. Right?
Yeah.
You want to be able to iterate quickly. A new model comes out, you want to be able to try it, see how it actually scores in that real use case for you.
Yeah, and the other thing that I would say is like the smaller models is not a matter of also saving money, but it has, I feel like I'm using the word layers a little too much, but it has layers to that because it does allow you to kind of like, for example, a smaller model is usually a little easier for you to self-host yourself. And if you're talking about self-hosting a model, then you're talking more of like an air-gapped environment. Then now that opened up for use cases that probably wouldn't be possible before. Like you can throw any data at that, everything is living inside your infrastructure, right? So yeah, as building these models or building this agentic systems are very fun.
Yeah.
And it definitely something that you can do all day and all night. But you see that once that you get into production stages, especially in organizations, like there's a lot of different kind of like angles and from the data to the model to the architecture to keeping options open sometimes. That's a big piece for kind of like a lot of how these companies adopt this.
Nice.
And on that point, like one of the things that that you mentioned, I think is really true, and obviously we believe in it a lot, is this idea that like reasoning and the ability to have models that reason or don't reason are important, and that's why we've designed the models with both in mind, right? Controllable by a prompt, basically, so that you don't have to choose between models. Now you can kind of choose one model and have it do both. But one of the things that we're kind of getting at right in this conversation is related to a question from Uday from LinkedIn, which is how scalable is it? How many agents can you deploy together in a crew, right? Like when we talk about having small hyper efficient models, we kind of immediately think, well, then we can throw more and more agents at this. But does that have a ceiling? Is there something that you've learned through using Crew that says like, oh, after you get 6 or 40 agents, you're hitting diminishing returns? Like how much can we, when we get these faster, more efficient models, how much can we just increase N, where N is the number of agents?
Yeah, it's interesting. So in terms of like people building this, the adoption is insane. So I mean, no joke, the number of executions that we saw this year, like we saw more executions on Q4 than we saw in the last 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So this year I think like was 2 billion executions, and out of those 2 billions, 1.1 billion was Q4.
Oh, wow.
So you get a sense of like how that chart looks like. So to your point, Chris, there's just like a lot of people building these agents out there. Now, in terms of agents per crew, there's no like ceiling because the agents, they can each use separate LLMs, right? So like it's more like an agent on itself doing its execution. It's bound in the context of the LLM that's used, but the number of agents that you have on it, like on the crew itself, has no impact. That said, CrewAI has embedded on the open source side of things like context management, right? So if you hit that context window, it's not going to blow up in your face. It actually has a few strategies that you can choose from, the full one being summarization, right? So it summarizes whatever is in the context window to make sure that you don't lose much information like that is in there. So there's a few things that we do to make sure that these agents keep running over time. Now, especially if you have many agents working together and if you allow them, because this is optional, to delegate and ask questions to each other, what can be extremely helpful depending on your use case. then that can turn out into an entire thing, right? Especially if you have too many. The most that I have seen in one crew is 21. That is the highest number that I have seen in one single crew, 21 agents working together. It was a market research use case.
Okay.
So was something for like meant for bigger companies that basically like they're trying to do competition across industry competitors and all that. And each agent would research a company on a specific like angle. So the agents were very much role playing as experts on very specific things to evaluate competitors.
And just a follow up from the chat from Abdullah I'm super interested to hear what you've seen in this regard. How do you measure coherence collapse in agentic systems when we do scale those agents, right? So not how much it costs, but how do we measure when adding more agents just stops being effective and we're just not getting more bang for our agentic buck, right? Like, is there a score you use, or what have you seen people do to kind of figure out, like, okay, you know, from 0 to 21 was fine, but 22, that's just too much.
Yeah, I think I gotta say, like, it's a spectrum of things that you can do, right? On the simple side, honestly, vibes, right? You can always vibe your way into our.
This is the human part.
Yeah,
like I add another agent, did the report come out more meaningful to me with ROI?
Exactly. But then, like, again, there's the spectrum of other things that you can do as well.
Sure.
Like we have a feature that allows, based on human the loop, for you to, similar to the new ROF plugin that people launch in the web go for kind of like Cloud Code. So you can kind of like use that to self-improve the agent itself. So there's things around that you can do. Then we also have a few other features like around tracing and evaluations that you can do. And I would say that on the far end of the spectrum, if in one side all you got to do is vibe, on the other side, we're seeing companies that are literally fine-tuned specific models just to evaluate things like that, right? And you have startups that are dedicated to that. I think like we have good partners like Galileo, for example, and Arise. They're working specifically on kind of like how you evaluate these things on a very scientific way, right? I think Galileo has fine-tuned models. They call them the Luna family, that it's meant to evaluate the outcome of the agentic system. So again, I don't think there's right or wrong. One of the exciting things about being in such a new wave of a new industry is that you got to figure it out, and everyone that tells you they have the answers, they truly don't. We're all figuring out as we go.
It's part of discovery.
Exactly. And I think like vibing is great. It might work for many people. Human the loop as a way to self-improving is great. Fine-tuned models is also a great way. You got to figure out what works out for you.
Yeah,
awesome.
That's exciting. I know I've got a friend who's a developer, and he's a big Claude code guy, but he has these agents on timers that literally, as he's coding and getting inputs back from Claude itself, it's actually like giving him reports in real time as a pop-up that says, "I'm not sure you'd want to do it that way. Are you thinking ahead for this?" And he's got agents that are arguing about the quality of his code output. And then he's basically answering yes/no questions. And it's like a video game, watching him in the middle and the agents arguing either side about the code approach that he's building. And they're doing a ton of VS Code stuff and more. And it's really interesting to see now he says he feels like he's got a team that's coding with him in parallel.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like he's got these timer checks, like, you know, I think it's every X number lines of code generated, activate an agent. And then it just sends the output to them. And it's like, okay, here's what you should be thinking out moving forward. It's wild to see where we're going.
It is. I got to say, I saw a meme on X the other day, but it's not really a meme. Like, it's what happens to me. It's like, and I found myself doing it last night. It was like 2 a.m. And I was in bed already, and I was about to crash. I can tell like my energy is pretty low, but I was like, all right, let me at least kick off like an agent to do something, and then I go to bed. So you're trying to get every edge that you can, right? So I kick off my agent, and then I just put the computer away and
I'm not as advanced as you, but my equivalent is making sure I turn on the robot vacuum cleaner before I fall asleep and hope it's clean when I wake up in the morning.
There you go. You got your agent.
That's my agent. Robot from there. Well, wow, we're getting lots of engagement from folks online. I know we're a little over time, but Chris, do you want to call out any, like, one more question? Clearly,
let's
have you come back on.
Let's do one more question. you know, this has been excellent. We've talked about everything from kind of the simple flow all the way to people getting crazy with things like Gastown. But at the end of the day, people want to run these agents in quote unquote real scenarios, production, right? The bogeyman that is production. So the final question, I think, is fitting. What are the main challenges you've encountered when deploying CrewAI agents in production environments? And how does something like Nemotron help overcome them? Little extra Team Green splashing on there. This is from Amir from LinkedIn.
I love it. Yeah, I gotta say, like, I think there's a few different challenges. I mean, I could talk about the challenges for agents. I think the main thing for me is you think about a use case, you put that out there, and you spend some time perfecting it. I think this probably involves a cluster of issues that I had. You think about this use case. Like this one, this use case, it didn't start as complex as what I'm showing you. It started a very simplistic way, but it sounds amazing from the get-go. And you deploy, and you notice like my team was using it in ways that I didn't even expect.
Right.
Because it has that element that people are talking like they would talk with a coworker, or like they can throw anything in the thing. You realize like, oh, I never expect them to actually try to cancel an execution. Like, oh, I don't need this. Like, oh, damn, I didn't cover for that use case.
Right.
So I think like one of the challenges is that iteration approach, right? I think people think about agents as this magical thing.
Yeah.
And they can definitely do incredible things and borderline magical, but they come at a cost, at an investment, right? I think there's a race to the bottom to creating agents extremely simple, to the point that there's so many ways you can do it. We talked about how to use code. You can use no code. There's many different tools. But, and this is going to be a hot take, hey guys, but good way to end the podcast. There's zero value in creating agents. And what I mean by that is, unless these agents see the light of day, it's negative ROI. Like the second that you start building these agents, unless it goes into production and it runs X amount of times, you haven't recouped any of the time that you put investing on it. And I find it funny that as an industry, there's so many people focusing on building and not as many companies helping on getting this thing live.
Deploying,
and it's not only deploying, and this is where Nemotron, I think, plugs in nicely, is like sometimes is the data access. Sometimes the ability to run this as local models. Sometimes it's being able to run in smaller models, in smaller devices. Sometimes the ability for you to fine-tune the model to behave in a certain way, right? So what I found it interesting is there's a lot more challenges from the more sexy ones, like fine-tuning a model, to the more quote-unquote boring ones, like, oh, I need a row-based level of access, right? Like, but it's something that companies truly need in order for these things to see the light of day. So a lot of the things that we try to focus as a company are those challenges. Me personally, a lot of the challenges that I see when I'm building these agents is usually, doesn't matter how much time I spend thinking about them in a vacuum, when rubber hits the road, I find something unexpected. So my advice for people is to embrace the fact that this is going to be a very interactive development process. What I think it's even more interactive than regular engineering, where there's going to be a lot of like changing and trying and error, and to the point you get something that you're happy with, and then it's all about how you keep pushing that up the right.
I think it's a great answer, because I think too many people, maybe not in this space but reporting on it, think that this is going to be a set it and forget it solution. Versus it's really about human plus. It's like, how does this, kind of like my friend Steve, it's like, how does it scale him? And then now he's constantly having this interaction. On some days he would say wrestling, but it's really this push and pull relationship that he's having with the agentic systems. But it's always maximizing, it's always iterating, it's always getting more out of it.
And again, to your point, and a new model comes out, and it's some other model, so you want to switch that. Then a new image model comes out, and then you want to plug that, and that changes your use cases. So it's not even that there's an expected way that people are going to use it. There's the world's moving so fast. So you gotta keep, whatever you do, I think there's an option. There's a lot of value in keeping adaptability more than what most people would believe.
Amazing. Well, I know we are over time. Great questions in the chat today. Hopefully the team is in there answering some of those questions. If not, we will go back to those live stream channel destinations and make sure we get you some answers in the chat. at some point, we're going to have you back, and we're going to talk about, you've been doing some seed building on the DGX Spark.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to talk about that at some point in the future, because I love this idea about the difference between running agents at the edge versus the ones you're running remotely, and how that changes the dynamic of everything. We're seeing these smart warehouses happen. That's a factor now with reporting from the floor. There's so much more we can talk about. It's just kind of wild. But you know what? It's a good point to end here. Where can they learn more about CrewAI and what you guys are doing?
Nice. I gotta say, like, I'm very much a guy that builds in the open. So if you want to know about what we're doing, I would say X is a good way. LinkedIn as well. You can find me. My handle is JoaoMoura. It's kind of like a mouthful, but again, it's both X and LinkedIn. We post a lot about CrewAI. You can also follow CrewAI itself, but I usually spoil a few more things.
you definitely have the privilege of being the CEO founder. Like, you got to drop it a little bit before everybody else.
I gotta say that there's some benefits with that, but now I'm in a stage where my team kind of like comes after me. I got messages like, "No, you don't. You shouldn't share this."
That's CEO.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
CEO. Go from there.
But yeah, I mean, like, follow us online, and it would be great to kind of like share more with you. But thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man, it's been amazing. And Chris, anything we want to shout out beforehand? I would recommend people go to build.nvidia.com, try the models out themselves, check out the latest Nemotron. It's amazing. We're seeing people do cool stuff with it every day. Cool things that Chris and the team did for CES.
Yeah, I'm gonna go through the slide rigmarole, guys. It's the way we end. So we got a few slides.
Oh yeah, we got to bring it up.
We got a ton of great demos that occurred at CES. Check them out. We had real-time voice with Ricci from Hugging Face. We had just building agents with our new voice and brag models. But we'll get the slides up, and we'll talk about how you can learn more in terms of the, keeping in touch with us, because even though we are live every Tuesday, and we will be for another 50 times, we are we are also reachable outside of these hours. So first of all, if you want to learn more about agents, if you heard some incredible things about Crew agents, but you're like, what the heck is an agent? This is great places to get started. developer.nvidia.com/topic/AI, how to build an AI agent. These are learning paths. They're going to teach you what you need to know. And we have some new agents coming up that we're going to explore, some even more fun concepts. If you go to the next slide, please. We have discord.gg NVIDIA developer Nemotron models. This is where you can reach all of our, you basically can reach me effectively 24 hours a day. And be more than happy to chat with you, answer any questions. I'll forward any questions I can answer to the team, and we'll make sure we get you looked after. We'll go to the next slide, please. You can also vote on things you think should be in Nemotron at nemotron.ideas.nvidia.com. This is not a joke. This is not a meme. You can really submit things you think that these models should be better at, features you think are missing, things you have experiences with that aren't great. Please submit these ideas to our ideas portal. Our product team looks at these. This is not like just something that languishes. We really care deeply about what's on this page. Next slide, please. You can also reach our Zach, who is not an intern, despite I think what the impression is, at community@nvidia.com. We keep him in a special cave, and all he does all day is answer questions from this email handle. I think he might be in that room, but we can't see him, so we can't be sure.
He is in the room.
And if we go to the next slide, that's me and Marun. I think we have a challenge slide, but we are going to be holding a Nemotron reasoning challenge. And this is going to be all about how you can make Nemotron a better reasoning model. There it is. There's the QR code to stay up to date on the next happenings. This is going to be a real challenge with real prizes. And when I say real prizes, I mean like real prizes.
Substantial prizes.
Yeah, incredible prizes. Special shout out to Jamil, another behind the scenes guy who I also think might be in that room, who's organizing this challenge.
He's in that room.
So he's close by.
He's close by.
Thank you so much for our guests today. Thank you so much for everybody for tuning in. If you have any questions, drop them in the Discord. We'll make sure we go back through and answer the question we didn't get to here. And we'll see you next Tuesday. We're going to talk more about Nemotron and agents.
See you guys next time from HQ.
Bye.